Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 161st episode of Real Hawk Talk. This is Brian Nemhauser at Hawk Blogger on Twitter. And for the second straight evening, we have a bunch of good Seahawks topics to discuss, if I can get the words out. I'm so excited, as you can tell. This has been a really interesting kind of lead up to cut down day. One of the more interesting lead ups I think we've had. And it's also like, am I crazy? But hasn't cut down day always been a Saturday? Like always? And then now it's a Tuesday, and this whole thing where we've got 2 weeks until the first game. Like, it's a weird deal. I don't know. I'm not used to this new NFL schedule. The 3 preseason games, the 17 regular, all this stuff. It's messing with me. But we are going to talk about it all tonight. Let me bring in the crew. Tonight we have Dayna O'Gorman at Dayna OG on Twitter. Dayna, nice to see you.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here.
Good. Yeah, I'm going to be eager to hear your thoughts. One of the things I love about having Dayna on the show, besides the fact that she is, her maturity level is about, an infinity level higher than most of the rest of us. But she also lives, in the heartland. And so you get a very different perspective about what people are talking about in that part of the world and hear different NFL news. So it's always great to hear that. So
thanks.
And very happy to see that Evan Hill at Evan Hill HB on Twitter is with me. He is the hardcore 3 straight night.
Are you sick of me yet? Like how disappointed are you that you have to spend 3 straight nights with me?
Evan, I look forward to all of our interactions,
half sarcasm, half reality.
No, it's really true. It's really true. I think we joke about it, but I love that, like, you're kind of like the mascot of Seahawks Twitter, and there are some people that abuse you, like, they kick you. I try to not be one. I mean, I do. I tease you.
But it's not like I don't deserve it.
No, you totally deserve it.
Yeah, I want to be super clear. Like, I egg it on for sure. So
yeah, you're a little masochistic. So there's a little of that going on. But anyway, yeah, we had the show last night. We did our predictions about who's going to make the roster. We talked about the Sidney Jones deal. Before we jump into the new news, Dayna, I don't know if you had any thoughts on the Sidney Jones deal, since you weren't on with us last night. If there's anything you wanted to throw in your 2 cents before we moved on from that.
No, to be honest with you, I didn't really know much about him, so I did a little looking after. But at the time, I mean, we have all been screaming cornerbacks on the show, right? And so I wasn't really surprised they brought one in, but it surprised me at first because they had just brought Reid in. So I wasn't sure how that was going to all mesh. Obviously today makes a little more sense today, but no, you know what? My reaction was, sure, why not? Let's see if it sticks, seriously, because at this point we just need something. We need someone in that position. And if they think he's the guy, bring him on in. Why not?
Yeah, so we will talk, I think, first here about the final roster. And, if I was prepared, I would have actually brought the roster up.
I have the roster up because we do so much preparation for this show.
It's so true. I basically tracked the roster as a diff off of like what I predicted. And there's a few things that stood out to me. And Dayna, you maybe you could fill in the gaps of what I missed. But
maybe
they did keep 5 running backs, right? They kept Carson and Penny, and they kept Collins and Homer and DJ Dallas. Yes. So that was a lot of people were like, hey, they're going to cut Penny. We were all thinking they might try to trade one of those guys. And as of now, all 5 of them are on the roster.
Yeah, I still don't know that they won't still try and trade one of them. I think that's probably when you keep that many. Now, granted, we know that the durability of these boys is not always the greatest. And so maybe they're like, we need to, some cushion here. And so maybe that's why they're doing it. But I still wouldn't rule out a trade. I still think that maybe they wanted to see how the roster settled to see maybe if there was any names that were cut instead of having to do a trade, that they wanted to look at that first. But this was kind of a hard year to predict right, because there were a few things that were odd with this. But I think that probably, and I don't know that it's Rashad Penny. I mean, I guess that might be one of the more logicals, but I don't know that it's him. But it wouldn't surprise me if there still wasn't a running back trade at some point.
Evan, this was something I expected, so it didn't shock me. I don't know if you had, I know you were thinking Rashad Penny was maybe at risk. Right? How big of a surprise is it to you that he makes it on the final roster?
I'm not confident he is going to be on the roster by week 1. So if we're talking final roster, like as defined by today, not that surprised, but if he's on the roster week 1, I'm somewhat surprised. I really am. There's some teams around the NFL that, for example, Ravens, Jags, like obviously they wouldn't trade, running back to the Rams, but like there's some running back needy teams out there. And Rashad Penny I could absolutely see one of those teams throwing us like a 4th or a 5th bone to, basically add Penny to their backfield. So I'd be moderately surprised if he's on the roster week 1.
Mm-hmm.
You have invested quite a bit in your Rashad Penny is on the outs narrative. So I know it's hard for you to get off that, but he's probably not going anywhere, dude. He's going to be there. And
it's very possible. Yeah.
He's going to end up breaking like a 70-yard run, and you're going to be all the way back in.
I'm going to be in
Rashad
shambles.
Penny jersey.
Oh, you're saying if he does it for Seattle? Okay, I thought you were saying if he got traded and he just exploded,
no, he's
then
gonna.
I would die.
I still think that he is going to play a significant role in the offense this year, and it wouldn't surprise me if he's the number 2 back.
So, how many rushing yards do you think he has this year?
Well, I can answer that question because we have a prediction about that, but not specifically how many rushing yards. So I'm going to go out and say that Rashad Penny has over 400 rushing yards this year.
It's pretty significant.
Yeah. I wanted to go over 500, which I think he could do. And I think he has done, but yeah, everyone's super down on him. I've been super down on him in the past. I don't think it's unnecessary.
Do you want my Youth XL jersey, or what is it? Is it Youth? I already forgot the size of it,
dude. It's like COVID 25 up in this house. I certainly have not just gained 19. I don't think. I don't think the Youth XL will fit. Maybe over my thigh.
One point about Penny, though, I don't think that people are, well, I know some people are real down on him, and I'm not necessarily down on him. I don't think that we, should just bail on the guy. I think of all of them, obviously we're not getting rid of Chris Carson. I think he's the most tradable. If you look at it, you know what I mean? He, was a higher pick. He's done well when he's played. We do know the injury history there. But if Seattle really needed another position piece and they wanted to trade for it, I think that Evan's right. There's enough running back needy teams out there that he might be the more tradable asset of all of them. But I think the 400 yards really, that is going to depend on how this offense runs. Because if Chris Carson stays healthy, I still think he gets, well and above. But then we don't know how much you're running, so it's kind of an odd thing.
I think you're right. I think when Penny pops, I think he's going to have
I like Rashad Penny
over 100 yards, and so it only takes a couple of those games, and
it's true.
Yeah, we'll see. If you ask like my confidence level, like how certain I am, this could go so many different ways with that many different runners on the roster. So who knows? But there's nothing I saw from Penny that was like, oh, this guy's trash now and he's lost it. I saw enough of him in camp where I saw him move faster and quicker than he was before he was hurt. And he already was fast and quick enough to score 70 yards away. So to me, it's just a matter of the right play call and the right moment. But yeah, he's not my favorite running back, and he never will be. So, but I still think he has value. But I skipped over what I think is, for me, the biggest shock. Like, I wouldn't say it's a massive shock, but it's definitely the biggest shock of the whole roster, which is Sean Mannion making it as a third quarterback. Like, when's the last time they even kept a third quarterback, and why? Like, why? Like, I saw some people trying to like twist themselves into some sort of like knowledgeable person. Yes, it makes perfect sense for them to do it because of this. Well, then why didn't you predict it in the first place? But I don't think it makes much sense. Dayna, do you have a read on this one?
No, everything from I went and I read. I was like, well, okay, what is the logic of this? And everyone's like, well, he has a history with Shane Waldron.
Right.
So what? Like, I don't get it. So plop him on the practice squad and let him teach those kids the offense. Do you know what I mean? Like, yes. I don't quite understand. I'm beginning to think he's a placeholder. I'm beginning to think that he was a placeholder on the roster for someone, either one of those vets that they're going to, sign after the season begins. Or, for some other trade, maybe they're in the works for. I don't understand. Do you remember, was it last season? We didn't even have a running backup quarterback at the 50. It was just Russell Wilson. They hadn't even re-signed Geno back yet at that point. So it is very strange, but I can't think of any other logic other than he's just a placeholder for some reason.
And you would think, like, if he was cut, is there not like a 100% chance that he makes it through waivers and they can bring him back on practice squad?
That's the thing. Like, you're telling me that it's more important to have him on the roster than Penny Hart?
Right.
Yeah. Even if we're using the placeholder theory, it's like, why not keep a Penny Hart or a Cody Thompson or a Josh Johnson? I don't know.
Yeah. It's super odd to me. Like, I honestly, I don't think that there's a good explanation. And the placeholder thing, Dayna, maybe that's the best one. Like, that is basically ignore it. Like, there's nothing to it.
There's no way they were worried that like the Colts were gonna like try and nab them. Could they be? Like, I am really grasping at straws here.
Possible.
I'm literally grasping at straws here because this like makes no sense. Is it possible that the Colts wanted to nab him for intelligence? I don't know.
I can't imagine. I mean, no. I mean, they would just infect him with COVID and he wouldn't be available anyway. So, like,
it's true.
I don't know, man. It's weird. So that was the biggest surprise for me. But I also did mention another one that was pretty big surprise, which was at receiver. They only kept 4 receivers. Everyone was like, oh, they're gonna keep 6 receivers. Cody Thompson and all this. Like, I cannot. This Cade Johnson and even Connor Weddington, and some people were like Travis Toivonen or however you pronounce his last name. I haven't seen so much obsession with guys that did absolutely nothing, like absolutely nothing in the preseason. Like Stephen Williams years ago had this massive preseason where he's like 100 yards a game, or Kason Williams was catching all these passes. I get being like invested in those guys.
Enough about Phil Haynes, okay? Enough about Phil Haynes.
Hey.
Enough about Phil Haynes.
Played in a playoff game and contributed.
He was helpful, damn it.
Yeah. So, yeah, but Penny Hart, like, I think seemed like a super solid 5th receiver, as far as what they had. But we got Sean Mannion. So, like, do you think they're just going to go with 4 receivers, or you think that's just a placeholder and they're going to pick up one of these other receivers that got kicked to the curb? People are talking about Philip Dorsett, which really, like, anyway. But Evan, do you have a take on either Penny Hart getting cut, them having only 4 receivers, or is there a veteran receiver out there that you think that got cut that you think they're going to go out and try to get now?
I mean, is it possible a potential trade is in the works? In using Mannion as that placeholder, I don't know. 4 wide receivers
that got cut were, Philip Dorsett. I think John Brown got released from the Raiders. Is it Brashad Perriman? I don't know if he got picked up anywhere. I think he got let go. I don't know.
The Hart thing is confusing because he's versatile,
Right.
which is Pete Carroll's favorite ability
Mhm.
out of any football player. He's pretty solid when it comes to special teams. I think he flashed a couple of times this preseason. So him not making the team is really bizarre to me. I'm kind of dumbfounded, to be honest, guys.
Well,
I don't have much of a take.
Well, and the other thing is, if D. Eskridge, I mean, he was hurt most of the preseason, and thankfully he's back, and hopefully he stays back. But if he goes down, there's nobody else that's got his athletic profile on the roster other than Penny Hart. Penny Hart was going to be the D. Eskridge stand-in. So that's the other part that is just odd to me about it.
I'm looking through, this is what I'm doing. I'm looking through the players that were waived on other teams, and there weren't a ton of wide receivers waived.
So
like, it's weird.
Travis Fulgham, popular among Eagles fans. There's a lot of people saying that the only reason he got cut instead of Arcega-Whiteside is because of draft position, and the Eagles just aren't admitting they made a mistake. So
one thing to keep in mind real quickly on the CBA rules that changed last year, the new rules basically allow players to be activated for game weekends. So the thinking is that they could carry 4 receivers on the 53-man roster, but activate a player or even 2 receivers from the practice squad on game weekend and have 5 or 6 receivers active for games. So those rules changed slightly, but still, it's kind of weird.
Is that just to give flexibility to the team, maybe? So then they're thinking that they can roll with 4 and fill in other spaces where they think they need more depth, but then grab game day help if they need it. That makes sense on paper, but the minute that one of these 4 goes down with a real injury, you've then lost the spot to have this kid have all this practice. You know what I mean? All this.
You're 100% correct.
I
don't know if it's COVID related or if that's the new CBA. But
yeah,
that's what they're going with this year.
Yeah. So that was a bit of a surprise there. Another modest surprise, they ended up only sticking with 3 tight ends, including Colby Parkinson. So Gerald Everett, Will Dissly, Colby Parkinson. 3 tight ends is normally what they keep on the roster, but I think we were all under the impression that Colby Parkinson wasn't going to be ready for week 1. There was some question about that. Tyler Mayberry's, who I predicted that they'd keep and have 4 on there. But they let him go. There is news that Jacob Hollister got let go by the Bills, and so there's some, what's the word? Suspicion. I can't think of a better word. That starts with a C. But anyway, some idea out there that Jacob Hollister may be on his way back to Seattle. Any thoughts there? Like, I guess my hope and maybe take is that this is a good sign about Colby Parkinson being available sooner than people think.
Does this have to do with the new IR rule, with the IR rules? So he has to be on the 53-man roster after cut day, and then they can put him on the PUP list, but it doesn't have to be the full time. It can be 3 weeks instead of 6. Oh, I'm sorry. I can't remember what it was. I apologize. Yeah. Yeah. And so that's not for a long time, but if he's not on the 53-man roster before, it's like a longer period of time. I'm sorry, I read that very quickly today. So
the change is that teams can take off unlimited amount of players from IR, and they're eligible to return after missing 3 games rather than 8 games.
Okay. So that was one thing that I did read, is that they didn't think that he was going to need to be gone for the 8. And so having him on the roster, then moving him to, IR, then they can get him back quicker.
Yeah,
that was one theory I read.
To be totally clear, if you put a player on IR before the cut down day, they have to stay on IR for the whole season.
Oh, okay. Apologize. Thank you. I read it real quickly.
Yeah. No, I just want to clear that up for anyone
Mhm.
else that was wondering. But yes, they can be on the roster, and then the next day, if you put them on IR, 3 weeks is the
Okay.
minimum.
So maybe that's why he's sitting there, and they'll pick somebody up.
Yeah, tomorrow the roster could look quite
Mhm.
different, and it generally does. I was a little surprised there weren't any other trades, to be totally honest. And maybe the Seahawks, honestly, there's some pretty fat parts of the roster that feel like they might be keeping people in hopes that they can convince someone to trade. Because here's what happens. Teams, they set their rosters, but they also are all looking at who else they think is going to come available. And part of their strategy is to maybe fill in gaps on their team with who's coming available on other teams, just like the Seahawks.
Mhm.
But then teams counter by keeping guys that they think that there's demand for, so that there's not as much supply out there. And then teams might feel more compelled to offer something to that team for the players that they keep. So offensive tackle for me is a perfect example of that for the Seahawks. I mean, they have every offensive tackle that they basically had in camp. Poor Tommy Champion's like, what the hell? Like, why did you just keep Greg Island? Like, why'd you keep us too? I think they have like 6 offensive tackles. They have Dwayne Brown, Brandon Shell. They have Jamarco Jones can play tackle. They have Cedric Ogbuehi, who I thought was going to get cut. That's 4. They kept Jake Curhan, the undrafted rookie, the only undrafted rookie to make it. That's 5. And then they also kept Stone Forsythe, right? The rookie. So you've got 6 tackles.
I think they only have 5, actually. I think you miscounted.
3, 4, 5. I have 6.
You have 6?
Dude. I use my fingers. I usually don't miscount when I use my
DeMarco
fingers.
Jones can play.
Oh, the list I'm looking at has
Mhm.
Jamarco as interior. Okay,
Mhm.
that makes sense.
Yeah. So you don't need 6 offensive tackles. You just don't. Like, that's ridiculous.
I don't know. Seattle might. I don't know. The way we go through players.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't think they've ever kept that many. So I'll be curious to see if there's any switcheroo there.
The Jake Curhan story is like kind of cool.
Yeah, what about it? What do you like about that story?
I don't know. He's one of those like we talked about this like a couple of weeks ago. Like we've just been sort of missing out on those like cool little UDFA stories over the past several years. And he really shined in camp and in game. And who knows? Maybe this guy's, capable of being a solid backup. I'd love to see the Seahawks take a more successful approach to O-line development.
Have you seen? Do you see the picture of him today at his press conference?
I did not.
I posted it in our group chat. I love.
Is he a big boy?
Build. He's got like. I don't think he has a single like crease anywhere on his like. There's no definition anywhere. He's just a big.
This is what I look like after Matador nachos, like just one round.
Yeah, I'm a big fan, man. I like that kid, so I'm excited.
I think you just like big fat football players. That's the trend I'm noticing with you.
It's true. I mean, who doesn't like a little Brandon Mebane belly roll or a little Puna? So yeah. But yeah, it is cool that he made it. And it's cool that Stone Forsythe is there as well. They've got 2 young tackles that they're keeping around. I don't know what it means for Cedric long term. Jordan Simmons did get cut, right? So
you did call that. Congratulations.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
That was an underrated cut. I mean, there was a lot of talk on Twitter today. Like he's probably going to get claimed, right?
There's some thought about that. The word is the Seahawks want to try to get him back in the practice squad. We'll see. Yeah, but they've got a bunch of guard options. So I don't think they need him. Was there anyone else on the offensive line that surprised you guys in terms of cuts or keeps?
Mm-mm.
I mean, I'm looking at the cut list right now. I don't think they didn't cut many guys. They kind of kept
no.
Everybody.
Yeah, it's just. I think the Curhan thing is probably the most surprising thing on that line. I did see some people hitting the panic button today when they had kept so many. They're like, Dwayne Brown. I'm like, don't worry, Dwayne Brown will play.
Yeah, I think he'll be back for sure.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, for the game. So I think that's offense, right? So we got those guys, and then switching to the defense, a little bit of surprise there as well. They ended up keeping LJ Collier, who I predicted they were going to keep, but I was kind of hoping maybe they wouldn't. And they cut Robert Kimdiche, who had been like the classic preseason training camp story, Dayna. Like, comes in, been out of football for a year, former first round pick, former top recruit in the country, measurables off the charts. He's figured it out. He's got his head on straight. He loves the game again. He's bringing spirit to all the practices. He's just showing up. He's in the best shape of his life, and then doesn't play a snap in preseason and doesn't make the team.
And starts a fight in practice. So, I mean, seriously, right? Like, do you guys remember in the offseason, I kept forgetting that Seattle had picked him up. Like, it would not stick in my brain. It was my brain trying to tell me something, and I think that a lot of us saw it, that there was a good chance he wasn't going to make this because he just never was in it. You just never felt like he was in it. I other than a practice jersey, do we ever even see him in a jersey? I mean, it wasn't meant to be. We'll just leave it. It wasn't meant to be. We'll just leave it at that.
Nathan, Evan, you've never been particularly high on Mr. Kimdiche. Any thoughts on his departure?
No, I never bought into this guy whatsoever. I saw what happened with him with the Cardinals. I saw the speeding tickets he got close to my house. Like, this guy is a ding dong. I'm sorry. Like, I just don't even. I don't want anything.
Great
to do
word.
with him. I'm just telling the truth. So,
yeah, he's almost as much of a ding dong as somebody who goes on an ATV without a helmet and almost loses his career.
That, by the way, that story is pretty crazy to hear. Like, what he's doing with the Browns. Made the roster.
Embracing for this. Like, we just knew it was going to happen. Like,
I honestly didn't believe it. I thought he was permanently done.
But you were
after he went to jail. I thought he was done too.
I thought this guy was. There were so many inconsistent reports from doctors, and I know his doctor was like begging teams and like putting his reputation on the line that this guy would be able to, get back on the field. But I mean, should he be playing football? That's probably a different discussion. But like, you got to hand it to him. He's making noise in Cleveland.
I don't know that you have to hand it to him. That part I don't get. Like, this guy has been a pretty despicable person since the injury. Now, it might be because of that. I mean, brain injuries do all sorts of things to folks. So I'm not judging him, but he hasn't, like, he's not someone I'm like, oh yeah, so happy for him. Like, it's an interesting story.
What he's doing impressive to you?
Oh, it's certainly impressive.
So that's what I mean. Is like it's defying expectations for me.
Yes, 100%. But I mean, the guy came out of school with a reputation of being a bit of a ding dong, to use your word, and proved it within a few weeks of getting, picked.
I mean,
and now everyone's like, oh, he's made it because he looks like a monster in preseason games. He definitely does. He looks like a difference-making kind of interior player. But what's he gonna do when he gets his first paycheck? His second paycheck. What's he going to do if he gets success in the NFL? Like, sometimes people think making it's the hardest part. Not for everybody. Not for everybody. So,
listen, and I posted a tweet today, and mostly people agreed with me. You cannot look at the Malik McDowell situation as a slight on Seattle. This is not something Seattle did wrong, in my opinion. They drafted the guy. He got in that horrible accident, was not medically cleared to play for 2 years. They even kept him on the roster like the next year to see if he could play. Wasn't. Then gets thrown in jail for 11 months. I mean, this is not something we can come back at Seattle about. This kid was done. And obviously someone got his head on straight, which is a terrible way to say after his accident, but you know what I mean. And so sorry. They fixed his head well. But and so now Cleveland and of all teams, Cleveland. Because didn't he go to the Cowboys last year and they cut him?
Yeah.
And so now Cleveland has kept him. And I will tell you, I follow a lot of Cleveland people. Cleveland was not sure he was staying. The beat writers and some of the reporters there were not sure he was making this team at first, but he managed to play the last game for his life and is on it. Good for him. I hope it works out for him. But this is not a slight on Seattle. Seattle did what they could.
So
and you have to kind of leave it at that. Now, whether or not they should have drafted him in the first place, that's a different conversation.
That's a different conversation. I
Right.
don't want to have it because it will get
Right.
ugly. It will get super
Right.
ugly.
I don't even think it matters at this point, right? Like it doesn't even matter at this point.
Yeah. I do agree with you about I think it's a really good way to separate the point out. There's a conversation about whether it was a good pick. And I know that everyone, including folks on this pod and including folks on the team, are, trying to provoke conversation about that on Twitter. And then there's this other piece of, okay, so now you made the pick. Did they give themselves enough of a chance to see if it could work out? And I don't think, if you think that they should have just kept him this whole time, that's crazy.
Because then they would have been ripped apart for doing that too, for wasting a spot. Yeah, this isn't on Seattle.
Yeah. We'll see if they garnish his wages after he starts.
People forget that situation ended really poorly. Like Seattle literally sued him in civil court to recover his signing bonus. I don't know what the result was, but that doesn't happen like at all.
Especially the Seahawks are pretty
bad blood.
They don't do that very much. I think. Yeah. Anyway, I wish him well. I don't expect it to go well, to be totally honest. Even if he could have a great year, I still think this will not end well for Malik McDowell. But I hope I'm wrong. I really honestly do. But before we get off the defensive line, there is a lot of conjecture that the Seahawks are holding a space for Geno Atkins. I'm not exactly understanding where people are coming to that conclusion. I think they would like to get Geno Atkins, but I'm not looking at the roster and being like, oh, there's this Geno Atkins size hole that he's going to fill. I just think when they add him, they'll probably cut Collier and we'll all call it a day. But I mean, is there something you guys are seeing relative to Geno Atkins that I missed or news that I should know about?
Not that I know of.
Right?
No, he might wait a couple of weeks to sign.
Oh, I would think after the beginning of the season, probably.
Yeah. Wait to see if some injuries come in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, he's a vet.
Ask for a little more money
for preseason. They could sign him this week and have him for the first game. I mean, they honestly could. So that would be awesome. I'd be super excited. But again, as we've said repeatedly, that means his contract as a veteran would be guaranteed for the whole year.
Right.
Versus waiting till week 2 and then his contract wouldn't be guaranteed. So I think
that's logical, right? Like it's logical to wait.
Yeah, I mean, if you had to guess, you'd guess that they would wait till after the first week, after the first game, Dayna?
Well, that's just it does two things. It does two things. Well, like Evan says, it gives him a chance to see if someone is injured, if he can get a better deal somewhere else. It's giving him the respect level for letting him getting out there a little bit more, see if he can get an extra dime, right? And you get to the first week, he's not signed, then you can sign him. And maybe that's something they talked about when he was there. And then that's good for the team. So you're doing something good for him, giving him an opportunity to maybe go somewhere else and make a little bit more money, but you're not guaranteeing his contract. He's not signed. You bring him in. It's good for the team because then now he doesn't have a guaranteed contract. So, and that's, I know that people don't always think that's how, the business of football works, but sometimes with these veteran players, there is that respect level where they'll kind of say like, you know what, we're going to let him go test his toe in the market and see what's up with that. Looking at, you're right. They would have to get rid of probably Collier. I mean, what else, right? You look at the rest of them, they would have to make that switch there. And maybe that is their plan, but it just isn't a real blatant plan out in front of us.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing that could speed up their signing of someone like Atkins would be if they feel like there's competition for his services and they just want to get him on the team. Like,
it just depends on how badly they want him.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, I would be super excited to see him at it. It'd be fun. I love interior pressure wherever you can get it. I think it's just anything you can do to help the pass rush. Dayna, you and I are defensive.
My favorite.
Defense. We love seeing quarterbacks get hit.
Quarterbacks are boring. Meh. Come on.
Blow them up. So I definitely would be super excited to see that move made. Even knowing that he had a pretty down year and he's coming off an injury. I think he'd add I think he'd add to the room for sure. So certainly more than I would expect from someone like LJ Collier. So all right, defensive line wise, I think we talked about that. We're mostly right. I think in fact maybe I think I predicted everybody on the defensive line.
Man, it was pretty obvious, I think, for
not
saying it was an
obvious.
Easy pick.
It was hard work.
So sorry.
Yeah. So linebacker, you got pretty much the obvious. They did cut John Ratigan, who I think was someone that a number of folks were wondering if they would keep. He had such a great final game. They cut him. It looks like he's going to go to practice squad, or is likely to go there. There's a lot of folks like, hey, they didn't keep enough linebackers, and I think people just are miscounting because Darrell Taylor and Alt Robinson have been playing Sam. So they have 7 linebackers, right? Or 6 linebackers. They have Bobby
Butler too.
Yeah, right. They have Bobby. They have Jordan Brooks. They have Cody Barton, Nick Butler, and then they have Darrell Taylor and Alt Robinson. So they have
2 deep at literally every spot.
Yeah. So I don't think there are any big surprises there. Cornerback, let's talk about that for a second. And there's new news here, guys, on cornerback today. Not just who made the team, but there's press conferences today. So let's talk about that too. They ended up cutting John Reid. That was probably the biggest news, right? The guy that they traded the 7th round pick for. And the news was that he would have had to play 6 games, I believe, was the report, in order for that 7th round pick to go to Houston. Now they've cut him. Hopefully they can get back on practice squad and get the pick back, right? So any reactions or surprises to that? The cornerback, other cornerbacks that got cut were Gavin Heslop, who some people really liked, Will Sunderland, who nobody really liked. Sorry, Will. But yeah, cornerback, they pretty much kept everybody. Anything jump out at you guys with the cornerback situation? At least in terms of cuts, before we talk about the new news today. Yeah,
Not really. That's straightforward.
Let's talk about the news. So DJ Reid was in a press conference today. Dayna, did you hear about this? Do you want to share the news?
I did.
Okay,
I did.
Share the news, please.
Well, I read it very quickly. Once again, I was skimming.
I will fill it in.
Okay. So he in his press conference today, he mentioned that they moved him back over they moved him to the left side. Right? They moved him to left or to right? To left. And he had been on the right side. But then he said, and this is the part that caught me, so fill in all the rest of it, was he said, and Trey will be on the other side, which is Trey Flowers.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So that was a little disturbing to me. So
Why?
what it looks like is, well, I'm just not the biggest fan. Okay. So anyway, because we need we need a cornerback. But anyway, I'm just gonna let that be. So DJ Reid, what that essentially does, what the article I was reading it says, is that it puts Witherspoon and Reid on the same side. And so does Reid start or does Witherspoon start? I think the answer is
layers
Reid.
to this one, Evan. So one, there are a lot of reporters and a lot of super fans, I don't know, bloggy people like us that get predictive on this stuff, that got really into the fact that the cornerbacks were at specific sides, and that Trey Flowers was on one side, and that was the same side that DJ Reid played, and they were, they would rotate, and then The other side was Witherspoon and who's the guy? I'm forgetting his name. Doesn't even matter. Anyway,
Trey Brown.
Yeah, maybe that's it. But
Mhm.
but then the season goes on, and like, I don't know that it's that secure. Like, yes, Richard Sherman tended to play one side his whole career, but I think he could have played the other side as well. So I don't personally think that the side thing is as locked in as everyone makes it out to be, at least for the team. And they proved it today by flipping DJ Reid in his kind of first week back, and no big deal to him. But it does seem to indicate that there's one of two things that's going to happen. One, DJ Reid and Trey Flowers will be your starters at cornerback, outside cornerback for week one, at least. Or two, that Sidney Jones is going to compete with Trey Flowers for that starting position opposite of DJ Reid. DJ Reid seems like a pretty good bet to be a starter.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's the safest bet to be a starter.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
What's your interpretation of that news? What do you think it means for the Seahawks starting corner situation for week one?
Yeah, it's not something super revealing outside of, I think they're just trying to get the two best corners on the field that they have. The only thing I'll say is if Witherspoon is truly going to be a backup entering week one, that's kind of disappointing, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't give him a small contract. It was like a moderate sized contract, but
$4 million really a lot for
in 1 year,
a rotational corner?
I mean,
aren't like the top corners getting paid like 20 million a year?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So isn't 4 million like backup money?
Yeah, I mean, it's like 75 or 80% the cost of Corey Linsley's cap hit this year. So
you're gonna keep going back to Corey Linsley.
I'm just telling the truth.
Which I love.
Yeah, I don't know. I think DJ Reid is the safest bet there. The only other name I'll just throw in real quick is I would not be surprised if Trey Brown was the other starter.
Interesting.
By the end of the year.
By the end of the year.
Yeah. So whether due to injury or just seizing the opportunity, I think Trey Brown is an up and comer.
So I'm in this weird position where I don't know if there's been anyone who has been as critical of Trey Flowers as I have been over the years. Like when that guy had a ball literally hit him in the stomach while he was lying on the ground and managed to not intercept it. I mean, that was hard. I don't, it was hard not to say some really, really mean things, but I'm encouraged enough by what I've seen that I don't think he's a dumpster fire over there. I think I'd be okay if he's the week one corner, especially if you're going up against Jacob Eason, like whatever. So, or even Carson Wentz. So I'm oddly curious whether he shows up and kind of plays better. I don't think he's ever going to be a great cornerback. And I will be more excited if Sidney Jones can come in and play well enough that they're like, been nice, Trey, but you're gonna take a seat. So yeah, I mean, who would you be most excited if they said, here's our two starters? And I'm not talking about guys that are not on the roster. So I know you'd say Dayna, but of the guys that are on the roster, who would you be most excited to hear are your two starting outside corners for week one?
Dayna, you take this one first.
You look like I just asked you to pick which child should die. Like,
no, it's so I am. It's not good enough. I guess this really gets my goat a little bit because it's like they've had the opportunity to fix this position and they keep fucking it up, and it's making me so mad. Excuse my language, but it's just like I'm so angry. But DJ Reid, I think, is great. I think he's a starter. I think he was so well in the second half of last year. I'm totally great with DJ Reid, but I guess it comes down to the enemy that you know, right? Or the problem that you know. It's because I guess it would have to be Trey Flowers. I would have loved for Witherspoon. When Seattle signed him, I talked to my friends who were over for San Francisco, and they were like, good kid, he's a good kid, like good kid. And we heard that. I took that to mean as he was a good player, not a good kid. And so I'm very disappointed that has not worked out better than it should. So I guess I would have to go with Flowers. I will tell you, once we start to see more of Brown, I'm excited to see if he can develop some, and see what comes from that. And maybe he is the diamond in the rough waiting there. And to be quite honest with you, I don't know enough about Jones to know where I sit with that one yet. But from the 4 that I'm staring at right now, it kills me, but probably Flowers and Reid.
Evan, how about you?
It really pisses me off. I'm sorry.
I love it.
I think it's a risk, but it's DJ Reid and Trey Brown. Going back, let's rewind back to draft time for a second. There were several draft pundits that commonly said if Trey Brown had been 2 to 3 inches taller, he would have been a first or second round pick. He excels in coverage. He's extremely aggressive when making plays on the ball. I was just reading this quote, and this dude has a chip on his shoulder. Like,
that's good.
It reminds me of like the Russell Wilson being short thing. He said, I'm definitely going to make a name for myself in this league, and I'm going to be around for a while. In response to his shorter stature, he says, it was something I definitely took as a challenge. Every day I faced that. And so every Saturday I went against a receiver or whatever in college, they had to pay for that. When you watch that game after game, a 6'3" receiver versus a 5'9", 5'10" corner, you should be pretty embarrassed because I locked you up that day. Check the tape. My height doesn't matter. It's a chip on my shoulder. I like this guy's attitude, guys. I'm excited about him. Maybe it's a little irrational, but he would have gone a lot higher if he had been a couple inches taller.
So I went back. I'm going to tell you guys something. Like, I went back to try to confirm some priors about Trey Flowers last year and how he improved over the season, which turned out to be not as true as I wanted it to be. But he was definitely he was a fine cornerback in the second half of the season and had better games. He definitely improved as the year went on. But as I did that, there was a name that jumped out, and I was like, "What am I seeing?" And I basically was looking like, who are the best corners in the NFL over the last 6 weeks of the season, right? Like from 13 on.
Mm-hmm.
Keller Witherspoon was the 5th ranked cornerback in the NFL.
Yeah.
He had a 90 grade, and his coverage was 90.6. That's not one game. And if you look back at his individual games, he finished the season with 3 games, one of 86.9 with an 88.8 coverage grade, another with an 81.4 and an 86.8 coverage grade, and another with a 77.1 and a 77.7 coverage grade. No corner on the Seahawks roster put a single game together, let alone 3 straight games together like that last year for the Seahawks. So I'm, as much as I really didn't like what I saw from Keller Witherspoon in the first game, and I definitely didn't like what I saw on that 4th and 5 play against Jerry Jeudy in the second game.
Mm-hmm.
I did like what I saw some of the rest of the second game, and I definitely liked what I saw in the third game. So I'm not just done with the Keller Witherspoon. I'm not done with him. I would like to see him get some plays, and I'm still holding out some hope that he ends up emerging and being the player that we all wanted him to be. But 49ers fans are cackling because this is what they've seen. He's just been inconsistent. He's not a guy that you can count on. So
can I say one thing real quick?
Yeah.
Niners Twitter. Have you guys seen it over the past 48 hours?
Pretty fun,
yes.
right?
They're on edge.
A
Yeah.
little bit. They're worried. Just a smidge.
If Mac Jones is good,
Mac Jones and Josh Fields.
what's his
Justin
face?
Fields.
Justin
Yeah.
Fields.
Justin Fields, yeah.
there's going to be some talking on Twitter that goes on if that happens.
They are not only that, but they're infighting about Lance versus Garoppolo.
They are in disarray. They are nervous. They are panicked. They are suspenseful. They are freaking out, and I'm going to enjoy every single second of it.
Evan, I feel like we should counsel them, because if they're not careful, they're going to get like doxxed by their own fan base. I mean,
yeah,
it's a bad fan base to get in bad blood with.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So. And I will have to say, if you guys have if you're watching the other side, if you watch the Patriots Twitter, so they're enjoying very much the not starting of the Trey Lance. They're having a great time with that too. So, let's 49ers fans might have to change their view.
I mean, we got to depart from Seahawks talk for a second, since we already have. When I saw the tweet from Adam Schefter this morning that Cam Newton was cut, was waived or whatever, released, whatever the word is. Whoa, I looked at it 3 times. I clicked on the profiles, like, is that a real blue check? Is his name spelled the right way? Like, there's no, like, is this really happening? And it was real. It was real. And one, I gotta tell you, my reaction, besides like surprise, was respect. Like, Bill Belichick does not mess around. He's like, drafted the rookie, played well, rookie. Bye veteran. Like, okay, all right.
I mean, the whole vaccine thing is like a real impact here, because Cam's not vaccinated, and you got to think about this. If you're Bill Belichick, what if Cam gets COVID again, like he did last year, and he comes in as a close contact to some other star player who has to miss out and sit a game, even if they're vaccinated? It's like a real legitimate, lack of competitive edge. I don't know what the reverse of that word is. You get my point, but like disadvantage, that's the word I'm looking for. But Cam's arm is shot, no pun intended. And
it's just not shot with the right thing.
It's not shot.
It's just not, but guys, this is the one thing I will say. I'm not going to pretend like I thought Mac Jones was going to be good coming out of college. In fact, I thought he was going to be the worst quarterback in this draft class. I'm like on record saying that multiple times. So if he ends up being good and the Niners skipped on him, doesn't matter. I'm still going to talk a ton of shit. It's just, I want to be clear. Like I am on record. This is a quick tangent. Pre-draft saying I believe Justin Fields was going to be the best quarterback of this draft. I cannot believe how far he fell. It's insane to me.
Yeah, Dayna, what did you make of the Cam Newton story?
I don't know that my take on it was not necessarily that it was just all about the COVID shot, that it wasn't about that he wasn't vaccinated. I think that might have been the final straw. But remember last year when Cam went to New England and we were like, how's that going to work? You have Cam and then you have Bill Belichick. And how was that ever going to mix and do well? And I think that Bill Belichick was smart enough to know that he needed him for 1 year until he could get a quarterback that he wanted. And if you look at Mac Jones and his personality and Cam Newton and his personality, Mac Jones is a Bill Belichick type of quarterback personality wise. It just seems to be a much better fit. So I think when Mac Jones came in and played well, I don't know if you guys watched any of him at all, but he played well. That was Bill Belichick going, okay, good, we can be done with this now. I think the COVID was probably just the final straw. If Cam had come in and rocked it, and then Bill Belichick would have dealt with him, right? But he wasn't. And so this was like, okay, is Matt good? Oh, he's good. Okay, you can go now. I think that's literally what it came down to. Bill Belichick is all business. We know that. There's no, over emotions involved. He's the opposite of Pete Carroll. So I think that I don't think there was a lot of people online talking today about, it's because he wasn't COVID vaccinated. Vaccinated. No, I don't think that was it. I think that was the last straw. Well, and he's come out and said he's not going to be vaccinated. He won't get vaccinated. Well, then I don't think he's going to be picked up either. So
let me ask you guys this then. Assume for a second that he's willing to be a backup quarterback somewhere, which is a big assumption. Let's just assume that for a second. Would you want him on the Seahawks as your backup quarterback over their current option? I mean, That's a big question because you're talking about giving up Sean Mannion. I just want to be clear. but no, seriously.
If he agrees to write in the English language.
Wait, what? Oh, his font.
If he agrees to.
Yeah. No, but seriously, right? Like, would you?
My answer is no.
And why?
My answer is no, because I don't know that he would ever put in the work needed to actually come in and play well behind Russell. So if Russell went down and Cam came in, I don't believe for 1 second that Cam Newton would have put in one drop of effort to come in and be a good backup quarterback, where you have Geno and Mannion, we can't forget him, but you have Geno, who doesn't play well most of the time. I get that, but I think at least he's willing to put in the work to try and be a decent backup. I think Cam Newton would come in, he would sit in your QB room, he'd get everybody infected, and he wouldn't do shit to make himself be better or to do things the Pete Carroll way. I think it would just be weird.
That dude, this is a controversial topic, is a big freaking baby.
He is.
I'm serious. The maturity level difference between somebody like Russell Wilson, even a Geno Smith, is like infinitely higher than a Cam Newton. And obviously Cam is much more talented than Geno and has had obviously a very successful career overall, both in earnings and in production. But it's just the quarterback position requires a special level of maturity and leadership, and especially when you're the back and work ethic. Exactly. Mm-hmm. And when you're the backup, you just need to be a stable force of consistency. And I'm not sure we would get that from him.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with a lot of what you guys have said. I've certainly not been a huge Cam Newton fan. I for the maturity level stuff you've talked about, Evan, he gloats as well. Like it's like Julian Edelman. Like there's guys that just rub me the wrong way in terms of how they carry themselves, and that, but his teammates generally have sworn by him as a leader, which I think speaks, pretty well to his character. And I don't think hard work has been something that people have said he doesn't have a good work ethic. So I'm not sure I see that he wouldn't work hard. I think the COVID thing is real. Like Seattle is the only team that did not have a positive COVID test last year. They're almost all vaccinated this year, and that's a big risk, like to your quarterback room to bring in someone that's not vaccinated. So that's real. But if he was vaccinated, to me, it's a no-brainer. I would 100% take Cam Newton as our backup quarterback over the other guys that we've got on the team. And that's with me not being a huge fan of his in the past. But I'm just not a Geno Smith guy. I don't think I think he's a zero. I don't think you win a game with Geno Smith as your quarterback. I'm pretty sure you don't win a game with Sean Mannion as your quarterback. So, yeah, I mean, that's probably based on what I'm guessing is not a popular opinion relative to Cam, but definitely crossed my mind.
Can I clarify one thing? I'm not saying that Cam didn't have a good work ethic when he was a starter, at least in Carolina. I don't know about New England. I'm saying as a backup, because he doesn't want to do it. And so I don't know if he was put in a backup role that he would have that. When he's leading a team, I agree. I have heard that he is a good leader, but I'm saying in the backup role, I don't know that he would do it. And honestly, at the same thing about this, we have to remember that I think he has other stuff he wants to do. He's just going to go and do his other stuff. I don't think he'll be a backup.
All right. So that was our little foray into other stuff not related to the Seahawks, but we talked about linebacker, we talked about cornerback. Safety is pretty straightforward. They did not keep Ashari Crosswell, but I'm guessing he'll be a practice squad guy. I know they liked him a lot. So in general, I think the roster was pretty according to plan, right? Like we talked about the biggest surprises there. Yeah, I mean, anything else, whether it's Seahawks related or across the league, that caught your attention today?
Yeah. Can you guys clarify me what happened with Diggs? I was like in a meeting when he clarified his contract situation.
He didn't clarify much of anything. What he did clarify is that he's going to be there for week 1.
Okay.
But then Dayna, maybe you interpreted it differently, but he was really beating around the bush, like said that he needed to make a statement and that it wasn't a new contract, but it was personal and that they are working on something. And I mean, it was kind of like all over the place. The big takeaway for me was he's going to be there. Like we all know he's going to be there. So whatever it ends up meaning, if they do some kind of modification to his contract, fine. If there was something else, he also talked about that, preseason is just not something that he needs, it's for the young guys. And so like maybe he just didn't want to practice, like whatever, I don't know, but he's going to be there for week 1. Dayna, did you get any more details on that?
No, I agree with you. I think that kind of like I had said before, this is a statement he's making, to let him know that, yes, he would like more money and he'd like a longer contract. And in my opinion, it like he wanted to stay in Seattle. And I think this press conference today was kind of a little bit of reiterating that, but saving face of not working over preseason. You know what I mean? Like it was just a kind of a lot of hoop jumping. But I think that him saying that they're working on something, I think is encouraging because that means probably sometime through the season we'll get some information on that. But he's not being overly demanding. I think he's trying to say he wants a new contract, but he's a team player. I think he was trying to make that kind of point.
Yeah.
I think we need to talk about the specialists for a minute. I was really disappointed Jason Myers is still on this team. I don't even know what to do about that. I was really hoping. I thought for sure we'd pull a Lions and get rid of both kickers, and just kind of go with the long snapper there. I don't know. I'm just thinking that.
It's on brand for you. You hate scoring points, so
Pete Carroll's favorite. That's true.
Pete Carroll's favorite point scorer, is essential to this team. So
I can't believe how many people got that wrong when you put out there about.
Are you talking about what
Brian's tweet that he put out there? When you put out there, guess who that is? And everyone is like guessing all over the place. I'm like, people, it's Evan. Who else would it be?
I should get his jersey.
You should, in a youth XL is what you should get.
Yeah, I gotta lose like COVID-10 though. But
yeah. So sure. I got a question for you guys. I have this potential opportunity. I can't say what the deal is, but I could potentially go to see the Seahawks play in Indy for the first week. And I was like, oh, dude, I'm totally going to do that. And then I'm like, Indianapolis is like off the charts with what's going on with COVID. I think I read that there's like no mask policy inside the stadium or something like that. Like the entire Colts roster seems to have COVID. Like, is it a good idea to travel to Indy? Do you guys have a point of view on this?
I don't know that that's a must-see game, other than it's the beginning of the season. So that is your call. But
you're gonna go there. You're gonna get COVID. You're gonna watch Jacob Eason absolutely light up the Seattle Seahawks secondary. And then you're going to watch Jason Myers hit a 60-yard field goal to barely win the game, 13-10.
This factors into the decision for me as well. The last time I went to Indianapolis was on the Seahawks team plane, as a matter of fact.
That's so bougie.
And
right. Nice flex.
I went and they lost. And some of you should remember that game. Richard Sherman got absolutely destroyed by T.Y. Hilton. Sam Hawk-Badger should be excited. Andrew Luck killed us in that game. Looked like we were going to win the game, but we didn't. So it was a very somber plane ride home. But they did go on to win the Super Bowl that year. So, like, is me going to Indianapolis mean that we're going to win the Super Bowl this year? Like...
what is the Indy like football scene look like? What's it like? What was it like visiting that stadium previously?
The stadium's pretty cool, actually. The stadium itself is pretty cool. The downtown area, there's a lot of restaurants and stuff like that, but I I don't want to offend anybody who's living in Indianapolis, but it wasn't one of the places I went where I'm like, can't wait to go back there the next time they play in Indy. Didn't feel like there was a lot to do other than maybe eat. But that could have just been me. I don't know. So
it's not on my list. It's just not on my list. No offense, people. It's just not, unless it's a playoff game or something. It's just not on my list. But
yeah. Okay. Well, I'm just really, man, I want to watch a Seahawks game, and it's the worst thing, Evan, because I really want to watch it, and then I know it's always so frustrating.
I was gonna say, are you sure you really want to watch it?
No,
like,
but you know what? Last year wasn't that way. You remember how we were all like, "Oh God, Atlanta, they're gonna just roll us," and then like
the first 10 weeks were like a constant orgasm. Yes,
outrageously good, and Jamal Adams was like making every play, and it was like, oh my God, it's happening. Like all of Seahawks Twitter was actually simultaneously happy and being nice to each other. Like it was so good, and then it wasn't. But
didn't they let the Falcons like back into that game, if I remember correctly?
Yeah, somewhat not like a huge amount. The Seahawks won that game reasonably comfortably.
Seattle just had to give us a little taste of a reminder of who they are.
It's crazy. They started like 5-1 last year. They started like 5-0 last year, right?
5-0. Mm-hmm.
It doesn't feel like that.
It really doesn't.
It doesn't feel like that at all. Like last year felt hard.
Imagine being a Steelers fan and starting 10-0, not winning a playoff game.
Oh my God.
We're gonna talk about this tomorrow because Pittsburgh's on the schedule. Like you look at that schedule for the Seahawks, it's hard to put down W's. Like, and there's a lot of games. Like almost every game, you're like, yep, they could lose that one. So
that's what you get for playing in this division. You know what I mean? I did a podcast earlier today, and our guest was talking about how, he believed that the Cardinals were on this upsweep and they were gonna, just make a huge statement this year. He goes, well, if they didn't play in the NFC West, and that is exactly it. We have to play these damn teams over and over again, and this is the hardest division in football. I say that all the time. I stand by it completely. And so even if you get going and they roll through a couple of teams, you're like, oh God, now we got to play the Rams. You know what I mean? There's always a downside to it every single time.
No, it's true. We don't have Jared Goff this year to kick around, even though, he kicked us around a little bit. But there was one other thing I forgot to mention. I know we should get going here in a second, but there was news in the division. Malcolm Butler chose to retire.
Yeah.
And
that was weird.
It sounds like something's going on with him. So hope everything's all right. But from a Cardinals perspective, their cornerback position is not super strong. So, I think that could be an Achilles heel, even more so than the Seahawks cornerback room. So I think people are pretty looking forward to having Malcolm Butler on that roster.
Where did Patrick Peterson go?
Minnesota.
Vikings. Yeah, Vikings.
Yeah.
Forgot. I just realized he was gone.
I mean, you're talking about Robert Alford. And I'm looking him up right now to see.
Who?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
He played 8 snaps for Arizona last year. He did play. So he played for Atlanta, and he was actually pretty good for Atlanta at times, but never great. I think if I remember right, he gets a ton of pass interference penalties, which should be great against DK. But then I don't even know who their other. I think Byron Murphy's their nickel corner, like their slot, and he's really good. But is Daryl Worley their other corner?
I think so.
Anyway, they're in bad shape at that spot. So
we'll still drop at least one game to them.
Probably
in Arizona.
Probably. Okay. So let's wrap there. We got our next show coming up tomorrow night, third straight night. Tomorrow night's gonna be the prediction show. Pretty fun. We're gonna go through our schedule predictions as well as some random predictions. If you haven't already, please just click the thumbs up on the show. It helps us out, helps more people discover the show. Click subscribe. We are getting closer to 7,000 subscribers. We're trying to get up to 10 this season. It'd be great to have all the help we can get to do that. Click the bell to get notified when we go live. And you never know, Geno Atkins gets signed or some crazy trade gets made. All that could happen. And then last but certainly not least, patreon.com/hawkblogger. We welcomed a couple new patrons last night. Immediate access to our Slack channel where all the conversation continues in between the podcast, in between the blog posts. So what's keeping you from signing up? Go in there. The proceeds go to a charity and help support the show. So patreon.com/hawkblogger. Thank you all for tuning in. It's been great seeing all of you. Great talking to you. And go Hawks. We'll see you tomorrow night.